me and Hakeem were talking about height and how people from different countries usually look like, and how we are gradually getting taller, et cetera, et cetera. But that made me think of this point, what was it, like 3 or 4 days ago, where I received something which I don't necessarily know if I should take as a compliment or not. I was with like this international group of people, some Russians, Ukrainians, 2 British dudes, yes, kill me, and myself at this bar, and the bar was closing, and the lady was walking around telling everybody that we're about to close in 5 to 10 minutes, and there's these 2 like extremely British looking dudes, but more like chav style British looking, lots of tattoos, lots of like, oh my god, I obviously go to football matches or whatever type of vibe. Very nice boys though, a bit younger. I think they were like 23, 24. And they saw us in the bar. They came, we started talking about politics, like always after the fucking third drinks, blah blah blah. But the lady comes and she's like, okay, you guys need to leave. And for some reason she looks at them and starts speaking to them in don't show my geopolitical location, but in the Slavic language of the country I'm currently in. And she turns around to me and tells me in English that we're closing. And tell me, should I have felt a compliment that this internalized bigotry that all of us possess, that I was considered to be a Westerner, an English speaker, while these civilized Britons were confused for a local Slavic orc. I mean, I really don't know how to take it.
She saw you're beautiful and she's like, hey, these parts, they don't get enough nutrition for symmetrical growth. I'm sorry, I'm teasing.
She was like, this guy's too nice to be from around here, so she probably she's speaking English to him.
You probably tipped, that's why. They're like,
actually, yes, unironically.
Yeah, that's probably why. Oh man, no, has that ever happened to me? Actually, no. Sometimes I'm abroad, and on occasion people will come up to me and speak to me in Arabic. But whenever I'm in like Turkey or something, people speak Turkish with me. So, yeah. Until I look at them, I'm like, I'm sorry, I have no fucking idea what you're saying. I don't speak your Mongol language. I'm sorry. I'm teasing to the Turks.
No, that's such a thing. Like the other day, also, I'm going into the supermarket, and a person from like a third Slavic country, also in the Balkans, is trying to talk to the lady, also, but she speaks a different Slavic language, and he's like, do I need to bring the beer bottles back if I take them? Because some shops have that policy. You have to bring them back, or environmentally friendly, but mostly because it's they get money from the state for collecting the bottles. And she was like, no. And I'm standing behind him, and I speak both of those different Slavic languages. And I go up to guy from Slavic country number 1, and I tell him in his language what she just told him, and that it's absolutely fine. And I tried to tell him that, hey, I'm actually more from that part of the Balkans where you're from, but because the languages are at the same time very simple and yet very different, he just thought that I was speaking to him in Slavic language number 2. So he just thought I'm like, okay, a nice local that's like speaks a bit of his own language. And I tried to actually start up a conversation, be like, oh man, I don't see guys from that part of the Balkans here very often. And the dude just like turned around and started walking away. And I was like, oh, fuck me, man.
What a dick.
If he realized I'm from the same part, he would have lost his shit, like in a very nice way. But exactly, fucking piece of shit dick. He was like, just another fucking local, and just walked off. There's something that when we're tourists, or when we're somewhere when we're not usually, this like sort of cocky shit that goes into us. Like I am here to give your community money and visit your monasteries and mosques and beautiful hills, but I am not one of you. Remember that, peasant. I don't know what's up with that.
No, I completely get it. But yeah, hey, it's always. I wonder what JT would be taken for when he's abroad. No, I genuinely do wonder, because you can usually spot. I don't know, like in your part of you can always spot an American, right? It's always it's as clear as day.
It's clear as day.
Like, okay, we're loud where I come from, but Americans are loud. Like, yeah, and they're too friendly. That's also something I noticed. They're too friendly. Oh, and on the occasion you see somebody like absolute stupidity. I think I mentioned this story earlier on the podcast, but I was in a neighboring country, and a lady was at an ATM. And she was trying to get money out of the ATM, and it had several languages, of which one of the languages was English, but they used the British flag. And she was like clicking through the list, and she's like, they don't have this machine. There's something wrong. They don't have American. I'm like, oh no, oh no. People will think I'm making this shit up. I am not making this shit up. Oh my god.
I always shell shock Americans because there's even some like military bases, some military dudes or whatever, and some of my other international friends hang out with them, blah, 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 and we get into like a room together or a bar together, and I treat them like normal human beings. Sometimes actually when they're military, I treat them a bit passive aggressively, if you know what I mean. And they actually super warm up to me because they're like, dude, thank you for like talking to me like a person, because everybody's like, oh my god, Americans, such a cool liberating place, man, I want to meet them, and everybody's like kiss ass as fuck. Oh, I doubt that happens in Iraq because of the war. Yeah. So in this like this relatively apolitical on an international stage country that I'm at, there's still this leftover feeling that, oh my god, they are so interesting and cool and so open-minded, let's actually poke at them. And sometimes they actually are, which is absolutely fine. But you see what happens, it starts irritating the people from said country, because they end up only being the American, the Russian, the Iraqi, the Chinese dude. Like they're not Tom. Like I want to get to know Tom, and not only the American. And it does get tiring. Me as an immigrant myself, the way I differentiate who's like actually likes me and is a very close friend, and who isn't really, is the guy who treats me as Yugopnik, not Yugopnik from country A, that's all these stereotypes that now he needs to perform in front of us in order to be validated, etc., etc. It's a nice little way to filter out people that actually give a fuck about who you are versus people who you want to have a token friend from that place because it sounds interesting at dinner parties, ooh. Talk to us about this that happened to you, man. Oh, Hakim, come to our fancy dinner party. So, Hakim, how was it when the bombs were falling right next to your house? Please
I've
tell
had
us
people,
about that.
There are people with absolutely no fucking chill. There are people with no, what do Americans say, tact? Yeah, and then they ask stupid shit. And it's like, why? I'm not here to fucking entertain your white ass about this, my god. But yeah, it's always interesting. It's always interesting when an American asks you that, by the way. It's like, well, why do you have such morbid curiosity about what your country did to mine? But yeah, it's all right. It's
true. But isn't there like props where props should be given? I don't know how it is in in your part of the world, or please tell us in comments, etc., and emails. We get very cool ones where it is how it is in different parts of the world. But for I would say even all of Europe, but let's talk about Eastern Europe. All wars are taken extremely personally, and people will say, we were the wrong side in that war, but I will not talk shit against my people because they had to make some hardcore decisions back then, and I will not soil my flag, etc., etc. But the Americans, to an extent, and I'm giving props at least, there is a very large wing of their population which are very, very aggressively and verbally aggressive in their assertion that a lot of the things that their state has done are fucking horrifically disgusting, which interestingly enough doesn't really happen all over the world. So
thing is, it's true. No, I agree with you. Yeah, it is that is an interesting thing to note. But also, like in where I come from and where you come from, the sense of identity is very intrinsically connected to these political wars and whatnot, right? So it's like, oh, if we don't fight back, then we'll be like, there won't be Bostonians anymore. Like that's what I mean, right? But Americans, it's not like this. Americans are very disconnected from the wars they fight. Even World War II was incredibly disconnected. They had one attack on their soil. Otherwise, so that they can afford to be a little bit more critical or not to,
Their material reality wasn't changed by the war as much. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
There you go.
The Marx is screaming out of Hakim. It cannot hold itself in. Yeah, go on.
This is a Marxist podcast. But yeah, exactly right. So that's why. And even then, like on the other, like not to be a dick about it, but on the other side, you do have lots of Americans who are like, oh, that probably wasn't the best thing, but still, so I thank you for your service, support the troops.
I kneel for the flag.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Yeah. So hey, you know what? If you're anti-war, you're cool with me. That's how it should be.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, the communist movement is an internationalist one, and as long as you're not a reactionary fucking monkey-ass piece of shit, do not give us flying fuck where you're from.
Yes. No war but the class war, my friends. And welcome back, everybody, to the Deprogram. Today, JT is also not with us. He is still sick, but hopefully, inshallah, he'll be back with us for the next episode. He's feeling much better. Don't you worry about him. Send him much love. People on Discord, people on the subreddit. We see that your well wishes, and he thanks you very much profusely. But yeah, he'll be back soon. Don't you worry. Today's episode, to detract from the heaviness of the episodes that are upcoming, is a bit more on the lighter side. That's what we call the absolute mad lads. Today we're going to be talking about episodes from different revolutionary histories in which people were just absolute chads. Basically, you know, the what's it called? The mad lads. You know, what's it called? The Chad music. What the fuck was it called? You know what I'm talking about.
I have no idea, my friend.
Oh, come on. The dun, dun,
you know what
dun,
I'm talking about? The music, the Chad
dun,
music.
dun,
Yes,
dun.
the music with what? The Chad's National Symphony?
Okay, whatever. The people listening know what I'm talking about. These are the stories that music should be the background for these stories. Anyways, I'll hand it off to you, Gopnik, to start us off with our first absolute Chad, or absolute Sigma Chad.
The Chad to give birth to the ideology of ultimate Chads, together with his fellow Sigma.
They're both on their grind set. Two Sigmas on their grind
exactly.
set.
Marx and Engels always been on the grind set. But so yes, the Chad to give birth to all Chads in his eternal marriage with his true ideological wife, Engels. Karl Marx, who, in my modest opinion, was the definition of what an insane mad lad is before the term mad lads even existed. Like, this dude managed to change history, obviously together with Engels, and yet lived such a lifestyle that would shock even the likes of me, okay? So... Let's start kind of from the beginning, where, like many students before and since, Marx spent his first year at university in Bonn in 1835, literally soused in alcohol. At this stage, he was still an aspiring poet, and he joined the so-called Tavern Club, yes, the Tavern Club, and the University Poetry Club, of which he later became president, if many of you probably don't know that. He grew a beard, so back even in university days, he had a beard. That's why whenever people see the shocking photo of Marx without the beard, it's like, oh my God, this ideology literally would be nothing if a guy that looks like that actually was proposing it. But he even back then wore his curly hair very long, and he started smoking in uni, which is bad. Kids don't do that. So at various points that year, he was cautioned and nearly arrested for brandishing a pistol, and he was kept overnight in prison for drunken rowdiness and got himself mixed up in saber duels against rival clubs. Okay, now they organize debates. This dude fought people with swords in fucking uni. So in his first university, which we mentioned, which is Bonn, he only lasted 2 terms. After he was injured above the eye in what? Again, a drunken duel. His exacerbated parents pulled him out of Bonn and sent him to like a more serious university of, as most of you know, of Berlin, where again, he joined a posse of young Hegelians in the so-called Doctors Club, which was very famous around the city back then. So shortly after his graduation and his move to London, the Metropolitan Police, and I'm not kidding you, pursued him through the streets of London, somewhat worse for wear, following a particularly exuberant pub crawl. In 42, I think, when Yeah, when Marx, 42 or 41, 42, when Marx and Engels actually met briefly, neither of them actually really, got it off with each other. Yet, when they renewed their acquaintance 2 years later, in a now legendary evening in Paris in August of 1844, their conversation, listen to this, their conversation lasted for 10 intense red wine-fueled days and nights, during which they forged one of the history's most memorable friendships. And although inseparable, they had their differences. Engels led a much healthier lifestyle, while Marx was very well known for just passing out on the sofa and failing to write for several days until he recovered from his hangovers. So all I'm saying is that, Hakeem, this is literally me, you, and JT. I'm like one extreme. You're the other, with obviously our boy JT balancing us out real nice.
Exactly. He's the glue that keeps the yin and the yang together.
Exactly. He's like Marx's wife, or like the sofa, which we mentioned. He's Freud's. Jesus fucking Christ. He's Engels's money that got them. Yeah, okay, I'm overdoing it. Now, the relationship was much stronger than just the money. But all I want to say before we start commenting on this insanity, which was Karl Marx in his personal life, we need to always remember that all men are men, and even those who changed the fate of history forever had lived lives surprisingly similar to many of us today. They sinned, they forgave, they were forgiven, and they puked at the side of the street. So please, kids, don't take yourself too seriously, because not even Karl Marx did.
No, for sure. I was gonna say, the thing you mentioned about him when he'd sleep on the sofa and whatnot. The secret police, I think this was when he was still in Germany, and they were tailing him, right? They were observing him, and there's commentary on his work ethic, right? And they'd be like, hey, "This is the strangest man I've ever seen." He'll be like drunk in a couch for like 7 days straight, and then all of a sudden for 2 weeks he'll do nothing but work, like tirelessly, night and day, like not get any sleep. He'll just be working, and then he'll just go back. Being like fucking passed out.
That's literally me working on the podcast or the YouTube channel, man. It's just one extreme to the other. Okay, not to the levels of Marx. I would never compare himself to.
But I mean, like as a man-to-man comparison, not like an achievement. But no, don't worry, the people get it. But what was I gonna say? Another thing is,
I wanted to compare myself in achievement. I don't want to compare myself by drinking. Man, I never pass out. Fucking Marx was such a pussy ass bitch, man. Fucking learn how to drink, motherfucker. I'm kidding.
Oh my! You're probably twice the size of Marx. He was not a big guy.
Yeah. I definitely am, actually.
But what was I gonna say? Another episode of that I like. I think this was also when he was still in Germany. But yeah, he would go on pub crawls, and he would do this thing where he would take stones and he'd throw them at like the street lights and shit, or like a windows. He'd just be a piece of shit. He'd just vandalize.
He vandalized all the time. Yeah. When they would mistreat him at pubs, he would exiting. He would take a shit right in front of their entrance. Yeah. And then the next people that were exiting would complain to the pub owner about the shit at the entrance, thinking that the pub owner didn't do their job to clean the fucking thing. Yeah, he just fought everybody. He was a very passionate man.
Do you know something? It's so hard to actually, because when you read the literature that he put out, the work that he did, it's so impressive. But then you see what kind of a guy he was sometimes. Like, and he had other issues, man. Like, he had him and his fucking carbuncles and shit. He had carbuncles all over his ass, so he couldn't ever fucking. He was always like perpetual. Yeah.
He owed so much money all the time that his wife referred to their like broker, the guy you take gold to give you some money in return, uncle. Like they became friends because he would just hang out at that guy's place all the time. But exactly, and then you read the literature. But we need to. It's not that Marx was, or some other leaders, some other writers that had similar lifestyles, that they were impressive for this dichotomy which exists between their writing and their thoughts and their lifestyle. We need to remember, like, everybody has their own peculiarities. There's no leader, poet, writer, artist that leads the lives that most of us are taught to believe because, I don't know, fucking stereotyping what it takes to be a successful man, which actually capitalism influences a lot by showing us these fucking CEOs that wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning and douse themselves in like minus 70 water because it purifies the mind or some fucking insane ass shit like that.
I was gonna say also like not to mention just like Marx's escapades, but the true MVP of Marxism entirely is not Marx, it's not Engels, it's Jenny Westphalen, which is Marx's wife, because not only did she keep this man on track, we all need a Jenny Westphalen in our life. Not only did she keep this man on track, but also she took care of him in his like chronically sick state. He was always sick. Marx, especially with like annoying dermatological shit. Not only this, not only through poverty and whatnot, but most importantly, his handwriting, which even me as a doctor, I'm like, what the fuck, dude? What the fuck? I have chicken scratches, but this is literally, no, look it up. Everybody go right now and Google Marx's handwriting. If you're able to decipher a fucking letter, then you win the game, all right? This woman, this absolute angel, somehow could not only read his handwriting, but would transcribe everything he wrote. So that's how we ended up getting everything. That's why, by the way, you need to be a specialist to actually engage with Marx's original manuscripts, because you need to learn his fucking the weird way that he would write. So yeah, that's another just a little tidbit. But yeah, so Marx was a absolute Sigma Chad. All right, he's like Sigma rule 206. When you're kicked out of a bar, shit on the doorstep. Dun, dun, dun.
Dude would be like a hardcore frat boy, man. Like literally.
I don't know why
it comes from. Yep.
Do you know what the weirdest thing is? Like, he would be the type who would be like chronically obsessed with some, like with Fortnite or something nowadays. I don't know. I get the vibe that he'd be yelling slurs or something. Like, I don't know why. That's just the vibe I get.
No. He depends on what stage of life he is in. But I have a couple of friends that are like this in his like 30s, 25 to 35. He'd be the dude that like always goes on these rants when you go out and you're just trying to have a nice time, but then vodka number 4 kicks in and this surrealist discussion of existence just pops up in their fucking head. And then you're listening and it's actually interesting, but like, Marx, dude, let's just do shots and dance to techno, man. Like, I can't even hear you. You've been talking to me for 40 minutes, but the fucking MDMA has hit you like an hour ago, and you've literally just been saying blah, blah, blah. Like, the fuck, dude. You know, that's what I'm imagining. And like, he has like this massive like 20 years ago blog, but now he's like the like kind of like Matt Crispin from Chapo. He has like Twitter followers out the arse, and he's so bored with the insanity which is Twitter that he is just shit posting on a daily basis at this point.
Yeah, he would be. But honestly, though, I think Lenin would be a better shit poster. But we'll get to these.
Oh, yes. Lenin would be so passive aggressive, man. Jesus Christ, that man.
I love it.
Oh my God, that man. I think Marx would have liked Lenin, and Lenin would have liked Marx, but they would have gotten into fights like physical fights, with sabers. Because knowing Marx, he will pull out the fucking saber. But yeah.
Okay, low-key though, Lenin would body Marx. I'm sorry to say, yani, like, okay, they're a similar weight class, but the I can talk about the athleticism of Lenin. How about this? There's a few stories I have compiled about Lenin. I'll give you two because his entire life is very interesting. If you're interested to learn more, Krupskaya, his wife, wrote Reminiscences of Lenin, which is like 700 pages, but it's very, very good. It's a very human biography of Lenin, written by someone who loved him. So it's a lot more,
By
personal.
the way, like, that's such a mad lad thing to fucking do. You have such a great relationship with your wife that she ends up writing a 700 page book about you. Like, talk about goals.
It's insane, yeah. By the way, this is just a complete side point, but there's some historian shit which is like, oh, it's a marriage of convenience because they're exiles and all that shit. If you see the way that Krupskaya wrote about Lenin and how protective Lenin was over Krupskaya, they were clearly in love. This was not, right? And it's like, oh, but they didn't have children. Krupskaya couldn't have kids. That's why they always wanted to have kids. That's why she supported orphanages. That's why they would elect to babysit their comrades' kids and shit. That's a sad aspect of that story.
So many,
but also
historic revisionist bullshit.
Yeah. But anyways, there's two stories. The first one I'm gonna talk about fucking the absolute Chad Lenin. Okay, he's the Swoletariat Lenin. There's a story. Just so people know, Lenin throughout his entire life was incredibly athletic. He would enjoy swimming. He would enjoy jogging. He would very much enjoy hunting. In fact, most of the time that he would spend in exile, when he was in prison, excuse me, not in exile, when he was in prison, after he would get out, and he would be like, basically what was equivalent of a gulag in Siberia, because the gulag system evolved out of the Tsarist prisons, but then it was changed in the Soviet times, blah blah. But just so you know that some form of that existed also in Tsarist times. That's where they originated, and they were less like single prisons where you're behind bars, and more like a very small town in the middle of Siberia. So they're like guards and everything, but you can like go out and just kind of live life, I guess. And that's why it was very easy for them to always escape. And he would escape, and then he would just go to some town. He'd be in some like little hamlet in Siberia, and he'd spend most of the days either reading, writing, and then afterwards in the evenings he'd go for walks, he'd go for a swim, and in the mornings he'd go hunting. And when he was in exile, one episode of history was there was a man named Nikolai Valentinov, who was a strongman, so basically like a bodybuilder of the era. And him and Lenin met in 1904 in Geneva, and Valentinov himself was a politically involved with the movement. And in 1904 was the first time he met Lenin. And to quote, he was immediately impressed by his fellow Bolshevik's muscular build and his interest in all forms of sport and physical exercise. Lenin, when he heard that Valentinov had once been a champion weightlifter, exactly, swoletariat. Lenin, when he heard that Valentinov had once been a champion weightlifter, insisted that he demonstrate the proper ways to lift weights. Lacking equipment, Valentinov used one of the Ulyanov household brooms to make his point. Ulyanov is the actual name of Lenin. Lenin is his namdigar. Anyways, Lenin then replicated the moves with a broom, much to the amusement of his mother-in-law, and then to quote Lenin, "Don't disturb us," was Vladimir Ilyitch's response to her laughter. "We are engaged in very important business."
Oh my God.
So look at the absolute. It's two Chads. They come and they meet each other, and they immediately start admiring each other's physiques. This is like, I like your pecs, bro. And then
Get away, woman!
like,
This is important business.
And then immediately is like, hey, how do you get that? How do you get the second head of the, how do you get the trap looking like that? And he's like, let me show you. Absolutely. What a beautiful episode of history. So yeah, that's something. And by the way, this was noted even into his old age. He would work out until he got a stroke and he couldn't walk anymore. So it's something to learn from Lenin. By the way, also
fantastic. Yeah, go on.
There's another thing is that Lenin also would very much enjoy gymnastics, and he would pride himself that he would do minimum 10 minutes every day of calisthenic exercises at home. So imagine this dude, he's writing State of the Revolution, and he gets up and he starts fucking doing gymnastic flips. He sits back down to writing, but yeah, I understand why Krupskaya loved him. I would too. But yeah, also he would do something else which I personally am a fan of. He would try to do exercise in what's it called, like household chores, like polishing floors and and cleaning and shit like that. He would try to work up a sweat that way, which I think is also very neat. He would always keep his cell room incredibly pristine. And he would hide little notes that he would try to basically sneak out to get messages to other people. He would write them as he was exercising, so people they won't get a second thought. They just look at him doing push-ups, but he's writing actually while he's doing the push-ups. Very interesting.
He would have one of those standing desks right now, a standing desk with a treadmill right underneath. He would have a Fitbit. like waking up at 5:30 a.m. to work out before his first riding session, but right before he starts exercising, he hears some fucking drunk puking in front of his fucking building, and he comes out and it's Marx, and they're like, "Oh motherfucker, I'm trying to sleep," and he's like, "Shut the fuck up, you bitch!" And end up changing the world forever. Yeah,
exactly. Lenin gets up at 5 a.m. to work out, as Marx is just drunkenly stumbling back in.
Literally like the two of us, like, fuck me. Okay.
Oh my god, I love it, yeah. Hey dude, I don't do that shit anymore. I did that in uni, the fucking getting up early to work out. I don't know where I got the energy, man. I genuinely do not know. Now I want to fucking kill myself. I like night workouts now. But yeah, anyways, I used to make my own fucking protein bars and shit. Fuck me. Dude, you have so much energy in uni for... Right? I say that like I'm so fucking old now, but anyways, there's another story that I would like to add about this absolute Chad of a human being. For those who are unaware, there was, I don't remember what year this was now, but I'm sure you're familiar with the picture of Lenin when he shaved his beard. Fuck, now I don't remember. I think this was before he moved to Finland. So this was in the early 10s. So like I think 1912 or something like that, 1914, around there. Somebody will probably correct me. Anyways, so he was just vibing in a hut in the middle of fucking Russia, and it was raining down like a lot. He was of course trying to be. He was running away from the law basically, and he was in some small hut somewhere, just vibing. It was raining very heavily, and then all of a sudden he starts hearing outside there's a lot of cursing and shit like that. A lot of cursing, as I say, and shit like that. Sorry. But he peeks out the hut, and he sees that it's a Cossack was walking along, and he sees Lenin, right? This Cossack walks up to Lenin, and he's like, hey, could I please get some shelter and like wait until the rain passes? Because I don't know if you've seen rain in I don't know how rain is in like the United States or other parts of the world, but in several parts of it's like in certain altitudes, for example, it rains, it like fucking rains, right? I'm sure some people in the subcontinent know monsoon rains, for example, like that kind of rain. In some parts of Russia, they get like heavy rain like that. So basically, it becomes entirely mud. It becomes like you're walking through a little like lake. So he's like, yeah, can I please get in your hut just to chill from the rain? And Lenin's like, yeah, sure. I'm not gonna say no to this guy. He's armed, so yeah, please. Please make yourself at home. So they sit together and they're just, waiting for the rain to die down. And then Lenin asks him, this Cossack is like, "Why are you out here in the middle of nowhere? I'm in Iraq we say bitchod. This means literally like in the sticks, I think is what Americans say. Absolutely in the middle of nowhere. And the Cossack tells him we're on a manhunt. Yeah, the Cossack tells him we're on a manhunt.
Sorry.
Yes, in the suck. The Cossack tells him we're on a manhunt where there's a bounty. And he was after some guy named Lenin.
Oh my God! Lenin. Come on.
The Cossack tells Lenin, he's like, we're looking for a guy. He has a bounty on his head. His name is Lenin, and our instructions were to bring him back dead or alive. Lenin's looking at this dude, and he's like, okay, what has this Lenin character done exactly? Why does he have a And the Cossack just basically kind of waved his hand and was like, we don't really like he didn't give him details. He was just like, this guy was bad, right? He was dangerous, and he needs to be gone rid of. That's basically what he let him know. So Lenin, he makes small talk with the guy, and some time passes, and the rain finally relaxes. And this Cossack is like, okay, I'm gonna go on my search now again. And Lenin thanked him for like the for the company, and the guy thanked him for the hospitality, and then they went to their separate ways. Afterwards, Lenin contacts the Central Committee, and he was like, hey, so this happened. And then that was their decision then to move to Finland. Finland at the time was part of Tsarist Russia.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the same like secret police system. You could get away with more in Finland than you could get in Russia. So that's why afterwards he moved there. So that was a very interesting and very long drawn story to basically say that Lenin was an absolute Chad. And this was not the only time this has happened. He's had several episodes like this, especially when he ran away from prison. For example, one of my favorite stories of him is the reason Krupskaya and Lenin got married was because they had forged papers that said they were a married couple. But then they ended up actually getting married. They went and they had their ceremony in a church and everything. Like they properly got married. And then I just so that the forged papers would be like, oh yeah, they're actually legit. But yeah, I find that. Interesting. He's probably had many episodes in his life where he was questioned, and through sly word of mouth, he got out of it. But so that's our absolute our boy Lenin.
Absolute fucking unit, man. Imagine going through that sort of weather, and then you fall. And then you just see this absolute other unit, and I don't know if people know what like Cossacks look like, but those are some terrifying motherfuckers. And he enters, the same space in which you're at, and then tells you that he's literally looking for you to murder you cold-bloodedly, and yet you sleep through the night, you keep your fucking cool, and you continue your life. And oh my God, in what way do you continue your life? I wonder if that Cossack was alive, like, I don't know, many, many decades later, and saw the uprising and some posters on the wall and was like, oh my fucking God, dude. Fuck me, dude. What the fuck did I do, dude? And like a revolution is towards the end, and he's captured, about to be executed by the Reds, because he fought on the side of the whites, for example, maybe.
Hey, you never know.
And he's
Maybe he
guys, don't
corrected his
shoot me. I
ways."
literally know Lenin, man. I literally kind of in a way saved Lenin's life, if you get my point. And there's a telegram sent over to Lenin. They're like, there's some fucking Cossack, and he's not even a red Cossack, a white Cossack, and he's telling us he saved your fucking life. Why would he ever do that? And Lenin's like, oh my fucking God. Yeah, actually,
my guy.
let him go.
It's
Fuck
my
it, fuck
boy.
it. Take his guns, whatever. 6 months prison, whatever. Imagine, that would be fucking hilarious.
Absolute Chad. Please, take it away. Give us another absolute Chad of history.
So I can jump, since we're doing specific people. I can talk about the relatively controversial but still undeniably Chad person who is Josip Broz Tito. I also have two stories. One of them relatively smaller than the other one, but still equally as important and equally as ballsy. So when he was visiting the White House in 1971, for diplomatic purposes, obviously, sat in the Oval Office, a place where nobody, and I mean nobody, is allowed to smoke. He unflinchingly took out a cigar, not just a cigar, a cohiba, which Castro regularly sent him for decades as a personal symbol of brotherhood between the Yugoslav and Cuban people. And this absolute mad lad, this chunky unit, lit this fucking cigar while TV cameras were recording live right in the middle of the Oval Office.
There's footage of it.
There's footage of it everywhere. Mind you, it wasn't just illegal to smoke in the office. It was illegal also to smoke Cuban cigars due to the embargo in general. So, I don't know, this is the equivalent of lighting up a joint almost in the eyes of the law. A very, I don't know, politically directed jointed that. But funny enough, this should have been, when I think about it, at around the same time when Tito was selling the Yugoslav space program to the U.S., a lot of people don't know the story, but the space program basically didn't have jack shit and cost the Americans, I think it was 2 years worth of GDP output, only to get, some fucking machines that spin in circles really quick. So this man, he fucks you, and then he fucks your wife, and then he sits in your bedroom and he lights up a cigar, and you're fucking allergic to smoke. This is how much he really, really liked rubbing it in.
You missed the best part of that story,
which is
when one of the aides of the, I think it was one of the American aides, like the translators, basically was he went down to Tito. He bent over and he was like, hey, we're not allowed, there's no smoking allowed here. And this was right before he was about to light the cigar, and he looks at him, he is like, oh, is that so? Good for you. And he lights the cigar. Anyway, I've seen he said two things. One place I've seen that he said good for you, and another one he said bless you. And then he's like, oh, is it? Bless you. He lights. I don't know which was my favorite.
It's also, I guess, a metaphor for broader Balkan perspective towards no smoking areas. Like, sir, you cannot smoke here. I look at me. Oh my God! Oh, the cigarette is lighting by itself. Oh my God! There's smoke coming out. Ooh, I can't do that. I thought I can't. But yeah, for good or for bad. But later on, many cigars later, actually, funny enough, this is a side story, but there's a myth that when his doctor told him, yo, dude, you're very old, you shouldn't smoke as many cigars as you do now. And he was like, okay, so what should I do in the worst case scenario? And they were like, you smoke usually two cigars a day. You need to cut it in half. So instead of cutting it to one cigar, because it was more of a process than it is about the cigar itself, he cut the cigars in half and still smoked his 2 cigars. He was always going to be right. He was not going to listen to the doctor. The doctor was like, smoke 1 cigar. He's like, no, I'll still smoke 2 cigars, but they'll be 2 times shorter. But many years later, and Tito passed away, which led to one of the most mad lad post-death situations that have ever been seen in history. So I'll quickly guide you through the day when Tito died. I even wrote this down. So on Sunday afternoon, Yugoslav television often broadcast like association football games of the Yugoslav First League. And on that day, there was a league match between Split, between Hajduk Split and Crvena Zvezda. And when the match was in its 41st minute, 3 men entered the stadium pitch, signaling the referee to stop the match. The president of Hajduk, one of the two teams, took the microphone and announced Tito's death. What followed were sudden scenes of mass crying, with some players, such as Latko Vujovic, literally collapsing down on the ground and weeping. Players of both teams and referees aligned to stand in a moment of silence, and once the stadium announcer said, "May he rest in peace," the entire stadium of 50,000 football fans spontaneously started to sing the song, "Comrade Tito, we swear to you, from your path we will never depart." And his funeral, like imagine, like I'm getting goosebumps. Imagine that fucking scene. And it's not invented, there's literal footage of it, which I have seen. And his funeral later became literally the largest state funeral of all time, with a total, this is insane to me, of 128 out of the 154 UN member countries having a representative there, with over half of those having literal heads of state, or at the very least vice presidents or vice heads of state. From, I don't know, motherfuckers like Brezhnev to the leader of China, I think it was Guo Feng at that time, and to the likes of monsters like Thatcher or fucking Yasser Arafat, who wasn't leading like a country per se at that moment. So just to make it more understandable, I really want to do this, about just how insanely many of the world's most powerful people came to your fucking funeral, my man. Imagine how many would have come if you made a second wedding. For one reason or another, foe or friend. Let me just dish this out super quick. So just to make it understand. So now we're talking about heads of state. Countries: Algeria, Austria, Bangladesh, Belgium, Bulgaria, Canada, Czechoslovakia, Ethiopia, Finland, Greece, Guinea-Bissau, Hungary, Iraq, Ireland, Italy, Jordan, Cyprus, North Korea, Democratic Kampuchea, Luxembourg, Mali, Malta, East Germany, West Germany, Norway, Pakistan, Panama, Poland, Portugal, Romania, San Marino, Soviet Union, Sweden, Syria, Tanzania, Togo, Zambia, Burma, Cape Verde, China, Egypt, France, Ghana, India, Indonesia, Japan, Madagascar, Mongolia, Netherlands, Peru, Spain, Turkey, United Kingdom, United States, Vice President, of course, Yemen, Arab Republic, Zimbabwe, and the list goes on and goes on and goes on. And if I had to list out the list with people who send ambassadors, it would take half of this podcast episode. That is insane for you to have left such a mark on the planet that every single of the most powerful people currently alive feel like they have to be a part of that pivotal historical moment, which is putting you in the ground for one reason or another. To me, is an incredible moment in human history.
Yeah, the actual funeral, like watching it's very touching. There's footage of it on YouTube, and you see, because they would do this in lots of socialist country funerals, state funerals. They'd have like people passing by, like regular citizens, and you can see just how affected these people are. And you could see there. What really touched me about it is you see these old men who have their badges, who served with him against the fascist occupation. So these are people who fought alongside him, right? And they've lived like long, rich lives, and they have like great grandkids and great grandkids now, and they've seen how much Yugoslavia has developed as a country, right, at the hands of the people, the party, and of course the Tito. And just seeing him, like the entire image is so incredibly powerful. It's a beautiful sight to see. And the biggest shame, of course, is like 15 years later, the ethnic strife and all this reactionary garbage pulls this lovely country apart to the separate banana republics that currently exist. It's exactly. The shame is even painful to utter, honestly.
Comrade Tito, we swear to you, from your path we will depart, unfortunately.
But yeah, anyways,
yes, do not push it to a bad note. If you're ever gonna die, talk about a fucking great way to go. Shoot us with something more positive, Comrade Hakim.
How about I tell people about Stalin's bank robbing?
Fuck yes, I love this.
Okay.
This actually happened. Like that is, I don't like history is so fascinating, and people are so fucking insane. Yes. So
For people-
just sorry. Just to revamp. One dude smoked in the fucking White House. Another dude was a fucking power lifter. Another dude was a mad lad fucking frat boy. And now we have a motherfucker that robs fucking banks. Okay. Everybody's life is multifaceted. If there's something that you should take out of this episode, and you live it your way, but also follow your passions. The fact that you're living it your way doesn't mean you can't follow your passions because there's one specific fucking thing that I have to do. I don't know, wake up in a fucking tuxedo in order to be a poet or some shit. But yes, please shoot us with the bank robbing.
All right. Okay, so this is like a bit of a long story, so I'm going to try to condense it and then give it a bit of structure. And of course, one caveat is when you try to read about this a lot, there is some horrible historiography around this event, because for some reason there's like two sides. There's one group that tries, like all the research on this is like by incredibly anti-communist historians, and on one side both of them are trying to make Stalin look really bad, but one of them is trying to make Stalin look really bad by making him the center figure, and he's the one who like specifically took the money out. They tried to pull this like scheming Jew like thing on Stalin despite him being Georgian. Like there's one aspect that tries this, and there's another aspect was like, oh no, he had nothing absolutely to do with it. He just took credit for it. And it's very, very weird. So it's hard to actually compile a decent story, but I'm gonna try to present something for you guys. So for quite a while, at the time it wasn't the Bolshevik Party yet. It was the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party before it split into Mensheviks and Bolsheviks. They had issues with money. They needed funding, and they couldn't get it legally because the government, like the Tsarist government, had basically made it very, very difficult for them to raise funds. So a bunch of people, including, of course, Lenin and Stalin and a bunch of other, Bogdanov and Litvinov and these other people, they got together and they're like, hey, how about we rob banks? So already, this is starting off on a good foot. But anyways, so at first there was discussions within the party. Oh, should we do these sort of actions or not? Some sections of the party were like, no, let's not do it. Some sections were like, yes. And this was like a discussion that happened with the party. Anyways, so eventually a group within the Bolshevik party decides, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead with the bank robbery. Or they called it, by the way, expropriations. They always had these terms for they call them expropriations. So they got a bunch of people together, of course. Stalin was the guy who started organizing all of this, right? Stalin knew a lot of people. He was very well connected. He got one guy that, by the way, officially, his nickname was the Caucasian Robin Hood. But his actual nom de guerre was Kamo, who was the guy who was actually going to, he was one of the main dudes who was going to carry this out, right? A bunch of other people, Bogdanov and Litvinov, who later on held official positions in the Soviet government as well. They were planning to rob a bank in Tiflis, or now it's called Tbilisi. Back in the day, it was called Tiflis, which is the capital of Georgia, so Stalin's home country. This was around June of 1907. They had been planning this for several months at this point, right? So they start with casing the joint, as they say. Stalin makes contacts with people inside the bank. He knows a bunch of people in the bank. Some of them are school buddies that he went to, and he basically figures out when things open, when things close, who has the keys, who doesn't, all that kind of stuff. Right. Stalin specifically picks out Kamo, the Caucasian Robin Hood, who, by the way, was described by official police reports as a master of disguise, if you could believe it. And he was the one who was going to actually protect the group. And how was he going to do this? He was going to dress like an army, a Marine commander. Basically, like he's going to get a uniform, and he's going to be a guy who's going to basically show up on the scene and tell them there's nothing going on. You like a police officer in the military that comes like, everything's been sorted, everything's being dealt with, so you guys can go back.
Brilliant.
Right? This is the guy, right? Anyways, so basically on the day of the robbery, it's around 20 guys. It's June 26, 1907, 20 guys. They meet at the square. right? And then they notice, why all of a sudden there's all these cops around. Turns out somebody kind of tipped them off. And then the absolute mad lads are like, you know what? We're going to go through with it. We don't give a shit. We're going to go through with it. So they, to make a long story short, excuse me, a bunch of like homemade explosives are thrown. Some of them don't explode. Some of them kind of do.
Classic.
In the in the chaos, they go and they basically rush into the bank, and then they start taking money out. And they weren't really paying attention to the money they were grabbing. And this was really bad because, number one, they accidentally left like 20,000 rubles behind, which was a massive amount of money at the time. Not only this, but also they took a huge amount of large bills, 500 ruble bills, of which the serial numbers are known to the government. So these bills were going to be useless. They wouldn't be able to use them. But yeah, they got lots of small bills as well. So that was
big number good take.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. But they realized that, oh shit, the bombs we threw aren't exploding, and people are just kind of like dazed right now. So we need to right. So anyways, they go and they take out the money, they jump in a horse carriage, and then they start driving off basically. And then this. The Caucasian Robin Hood, he shows up and he's like, hey, yeah, he comes in this uniform. He's like, hey, we're everything's fine to the cops and the military. You guys should go back to where you came from. We're dealing with it right now. Now, here's what's interesting afterwards. This guy, Camo, he was captured. Not only was he captured, he was sent to prison. He was the only one who was tried and sent to prison. All the other ones got away with it. When he was in prison, he feigned insanity by doing stupid shit. Like he would, how a person feigns insanity, basically. And they brought like what's it called, a specialist from Germany and all that kind of stuff to assess if he was actually truly insane. And they judged him that yes, he was insane. So they let him out peacefully, and he went on to rob more
then
banks.
they called him the insane Caucasian. But
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I had to do it.
No, hold on. He went on to go and rob even more banks afterwards. Finally, in the 20s, he was he passed away. By the way, he was.
And then they called him the dead Caucasian. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, hold on. He robbed more banks. He was imprisoned again, and in 1917, when the revolution happened, he was freed, and he was just vibing, living his life. And in 1922, he died because he was like just going for a joyride on his bicycle.
Stalin was literally like, I remember my bros when I'm on top, bruv.
Exactly right.
All everybody eats. DJ Khaled, Stalin.
No, hold on. Listen to how much
you
of a chat.
eat. Yeah.
Listen to how much of a chat he was. This guy, he dies in 1922, and the Soviets not only build a monument to him in the square where he committed the robbery, but they also bury him in the square where he committed the robbery. And he was there until I think the 50s or something, and then finally when modern Georgia, they removed the what's it called, the monument. But yeah, there's a very interesting story. Maybe we should do like an actual episode on all the bank robberies that the Bolsheviks did, because there's an interesting story of how Lenin tried to get those 500 ruble bills to be actually exchangeable, and he would basically hand off money to different Bolshevik people, the Bolshevik party members of the party, and they would go to Stockholm and Berlin and Geneva and all these different places trying to exchange them. And some of them would get arrested, some of them wouldn't. And what interests me is how international the movement was, especially compared to today, despite the fact that today we have a much larger ability to have an international movement. Back then, they would just be like, hey, yeah, go to Berlin. And that's where Kama was arrested, by the way, the Caucasian Robin Hood. He was sent to Berlin to try to exchange some money, these 500 ruble bills. And also he was there to buy more explosives so that he could go and buy more.
Hello, sir. This unmarked but very marked 500 ruble bills. Can I exchange it, please, for something I can rob another bank with? Thank you very much. I am from the Caucasus.
Another silly note to connect with Lenin was after Kama was arrested, they would have had like a trail to Lenin. So Lenin he left Finland at the time to get away from the Okhrana, the secret police that were looking after him, and he had to walk like 5 or 10 kilometers or something across some frozen lake in Russia. And during the trek, the ice gave way, and Lenin and a bunch of people with him fell underneath the ice. Right? And then they had to basically swim out and everything. And later on in his life, Lenin had commented that he that was a stupid way to die. That's how he said it. He was like, that would have been a stupid way to go. But yeah. Anyways, yeah, so they went to Switzerland, whatever, and they tried. And then afterwards, they couldn't exchange the bills, so then they just burnt them in a big pile. And the actual exchangeable bills they could use. As to the amount of money, I believe it depends on where you're seeing the conversion, but I've seen as high as like $3 million. As the actual amount at the end of the day. So that's absolute mad lad. By the way, if you're wondering what Stalin's role was in all of this, he was the organizer of all this, and then I think he was also helped with the getaway and everything like that. Yes, all the revolutionaries who took part in that were absolute mad lads, and not something we recommend in modern day revolutionary activity. But it's a very interesting episode of history nonetheless, I would say.
It's so fucking wild. And if you Google actually Simon Camo's face, he looks exactly what you expect him to be. Like this mustache dude with beautiful, voluptuous, slick back hair in a really nice tight suit. Like this dude robs banks. Like you meet him and he's like, "Hello, I am what? I am car mechanic." You're like, "No, you rob banks. You most definitely rob banks, my friend." But it's just incredible how the government remembered him even after all the wild shit he did. But I guess a lot of us have passions about things that might not co-align with our, I don't know, what would you call a moral compass, which again depends on the system in which you're growing up in, blah, blah, blah. We talked about this. But for example, I don't know, the Caucasian was like, man, I really want to rob some motherfucking banks, but I'd feel shitty doing it. And then, these communists come in like, you can rob banks, but for a cause. Oh, fuck, yes. Okay, let's fucking do this. Let us fucking do this. So, maybe if you have some things that are not necessarily seen in a positive limelight when it comes to doing them as an individual in today's society, you never know. Maybe when it's done for the right goal and with the long term in mind, they will start making a lot more sense, and you will not lose a lot of sleep about it at evening. And to me, robbing banks at that time, in order to from already a insanely autocratic, disgusting state, in order to supply money for a revolutionary movement is an absolutely brilliant fucking thing to do. Yeah. And it is insane that there's no movies about this. Like I would make a super high budget film about this dude. Like and I would make it fucking Hollywood as fuck. And like they can even do it. Okay, fucking pretend Stalin wasn't there, or like make him, I don't know, look like he has 3 eyes or some shit. But make the movie. It would be super fucking cool.
Just a side note, in 1911, Stalin was arrested. He was arrested several times. But in 1911, he was arrested, and they had, like, in the police report, and they assumed that he had a part to play in it. And the police report, it states that when the robbery was going on, Stalin was on, like, the square where it happened. He was just chilling, leaning against a lighting pole, smoking a cigarette, just observing what was happening. That was just the image of that, especially if you know what Stalin looked like at the age, you know? Yeah. He was a good-looking guy, by the way. So yeah,
it's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, no,
like you can't make this shit up. Like it's that good that you absolutely cannot.
There's a bunch of other stuff in Stalin's life. There was one time that he escaped from what's it called? He escaped from prison, and he basically broke into a manor of some like rich dude basically. And the wife of the guy of the manor saw him, and she was like, "Hey, like, oh, what the fuck are you doing?" Blah blah. And then he basically explained to her what he was, and she was like. It's even like it's so ridiculous. It's like a James Bond fucking story. Basically, she sits and then they end up chatting for quite a bit, and then she tells him like, "Oh, if you don't sleep with me, I'm gonna rat on you." So basically, he had to escape prison, and then so she wouldn't call the police. Basically, anyways, so yeah, I mean that's
literal sexual assault.
Stalin, yeah, I know.
There we go.
Yeah, it's messed up, but also it's almost like a James Bond fucking.
Yeah, it is. It
right?
is.
Yeah, it's messed up. I mean, Castro had episodes like this too. It's insane.
Oh yeah, I can just quickly comment on that, and a lot of it is myth to an extent because I don't know, Hakeem. To me, the numbers sound absolutely fucking insane. Some people say that Castro slept with up to 35,000 women. Like sex would get boring to me after 3,000 women, and I should know I'm at 2,342. I think it was. I'm just kidding. I'm around 500 something. But yeah, so I'm not sure if all of these stories like make sense, but the ones that can literally be quoted, and in typical Orientalist fashion, even quoted by Western sources, what I found is that we can say for sure that Castro really did have an intense sexual appetite, and this is according to a former Castro insider working for the New York Post. The New York Post reported that Castro had sex with at least 2 women a day at lunch and dinner, and sometimes even at breakfast. I never enjoyed morning sex. I don't know. I'm a night sex type of guy. we're all like the juices. I want us to have a fucking shower before we touch. And this can be a nice conversation for later. Additionally, a Vanity Fair reporter in 2008 revealed that he loved to flirt and littered his speeches with crude sexual innuendos. Naughty Castro, we should never do this. But when asked, and this is my favorite, this is why I wanted to talk about it. Listen to this. When asked how many children he had, he said, well, I don't have a tribe. Not that much, fewer than a dozen.
Yeah. No, I love
not
it.
that much. It's not a tribe, man. Yeah, I have like 10, 15, but not a tribe. It's absolutely fucking wild.
Look, this is the beauty of the human condition, right? There are some people who are like this, and there are other people. For example, like Lenin, who met his wife in 1893 or something, and he was basically faithful to her throughout his entire life. Except for some bullshit where people go, oh, in Paris he was with blah, blah, blah. No, that's all complete nonsense. There's no actual evidence for that. But yeah, equally, Stalin also was, Guevara to Almeida, for example. There are many different examples of, and that's the yeah, like I said, the beauty of the human condition. There's some people who are some people who are dogs, like Castro or Mao. And then, do you know my favorite story is, Ho Chi Minh? I love Ho Chi Minh. But when you look at him, he looks like such a sweet grandpa figure, right? He looks like the type of guy. He looks like he cooks good food. He tells good stories, and he's like the kind that you give your kids to, his grandkids, and he'll just look after them. He's like, you guys have your fun, right? Like to right? That he's like that type, right? But Ho Chi Minh laid pipe, my man. Ho Chi Minh fucked. He fucked a lot. Apparently. Like, I don't actually. Do you know? It's to the point that
actually it's hung. I heard
Apparently, there's actually it's
the skinny guys always. Sorry for that. It's always the skinny guys. It's always the skinny guys that got a fucking third leg, man. Oh my god.
Okay. And it's actually a sensitive point with the Vietnamese government actually, because they really want to maintain this Uncle Ho personage, image of him. And then when they realize, he was Uncle Ho, but he's also gonna fuck your sister. I'm kidding. Like
Uncle Ho got a lot of hoes, man.
Oh my god, these are all jokes, people. But so just know that this is all right.
That's a very big thing with communists that keep doing that. I read up on how many puritanical Marxists really wanted to hide just how batshit wild our boy was throughout his youth, etc., because oh my god, it's going to negatively impact the movement. And I can agree to an extent in that insanely puritanical and conservative social sphere in which those movements were trying to peek their cute little heads out of the bushes through. But funny enough, now there's a podcast where 2 dudes are talking about all this wild shit in a very positive way, because modern generations fucking roll with it. I wanna, for some people it's going to be completely relatable through the readings and the academic stuff, etc., and through class consciousness, blah blah blah. You know what I'm gonna say, but I don't have to spend like 5 minutes saying it. But to other people, you need to kind of connect to this motherfucker. And some guy's gonna say, "Man, Lenin lifted? I fucking love lifting. Oh my god, maybe I should read this motherfucker." Or other guys like, "Man, I love fucking partying. I thought communism is this fucking serious shit. What the writer fucking went clubbing every night? What the fuck?" That really will influence some people. So when you're talking to the type of person, to different types of people at some point in your life, and you're introducing them to these sorts of ideologies, ideologies. Maybe also that aspect of the fact that all these people were human. I keep repeating myself, but it's important. That should be introduced to them, because when we think of, correct me if I'm wrong, Hakim, but when I think of most historical figures, all the time, I'm only thinking of like the 7 events that have defined their life and that they did. Okay, this battle, this law that was passed, first, second marriage, and then I'm talking, for example, about a king, and who the main prince was who's going to take over, and how he had to kill one of his kids because the kid wanted to overthrow him, blah, blah, blah. That's like 7 events. And yet, in between those 7 events, depending on the time, there's either 30 years or 80 or 110 years that nobody fucking thinks about except professional historians, obviously. But it's I wouldn't say equally, but almost as equally as important as the key events which did define their lives.
Yeah,
For us to know
really
them.
like. Yeah. No, for sure. That's why I really like the book I mentioned earlier, Reminiscences of Lenin, because it's a human biography where you learn about him as a human, but you don't learn just like the politics around. Like you learn about how he would come in. What a poor guy. He was in his early 20s and he had already lost all his hair, basically. And that was Krupskaya's first impression of him. She was like, "Who's this young bald guy?"
Bald guy. Yeah.
and you know that the first impression was, "Who's this young bald guy?" And then he sat in a small reading circle of Marx, and everybody there had only read what's it called, the manifesto at that point.
Oh, shit.
And Marx and Lenin had he's read like the Grundrisse, he's read Capital. He's done the homework, right?
Yeah.
And he comes and he just blows them all out of the water. And that's, I think, the point where you can feel like Krupskaya. That's where the attraction began, because she's like, "Oh my, this guy knows his stuff. His bald head's looking extra shiny today."
He doesn't only have guns on his arms, but his brain is pretty muscular too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Lots of ribs on that. Imagine how ribbed his other
God.
stuff is.
Okay, copy.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm really sorry.
But yeah. By the way, like we'll do. I think we should do an episode on that as well. Just the women of the Bolshevik Revolution. No, the women of the Bolshevik Revolution. Because
Yes,
there's some
absolutely.
absolute chads or chadettes. I don't know what to say, but absolute amazing people. Krupskaya as well. Colonized and there's so many of them. Okay, if you would allow me, I would like to talk about.
Please go on.
About my absolute favorite person. Like Soviet veteran, which is a woman that goes by the name Maria Oktyabrskaya, which everybody's supposed to buy. I know that in Russian it's supposed to be emphasis on the middle syllable, so it's Oktyabrskaya. Yeah. But anyways, I know which one's your favorite.
I'm saying she's my second favorite, because I'll tell my favorite female
I know.
Red Army. But yeah, go on.
Maria Oktyabrskaya, and she is. There's a lot of epicness around her life. Basically, this is one of those things where I'm surprised that they haven't made a movie. Actually, to such a point that there's a website called Rejected Princesses, which is supposed to be like about women who should have been Disney princesses, but they were like nobody was actually took them up. So Rejected Princesses. Now this absolute Chad, basically, what she did is she was married to a Soviet soldier, basically, at the time, and she herself, by the way, was no stranger to this stuff. She personally practiced marksmanship and other military stuff. So she was very, very competent.
She was very
herself,
popular in the beginning of the Soviet Union because that was absolutely forbidden for women. I mean, it was forbidden for them to go to school, let alone fucking hold a rifle, and it was actually encouraged.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry to
We're
interrupt,
talking about
yeah.
from SARS to Soviet, because once the Soviet Union came in, they opened up all these rights and whatever, and she was one of the first people to start taking this stuff up. And she took basically her life as being related to the military. She took it very seriously. Anyways, she after the World War II started, basically the war happens, and somewhere around 1941, her husband dies in fighting in Kiev or so, somewhere around there. He fighting the Nazis, he dies. And it takes a little while for the news to reach her, but the news gets to her. The second the news gets to her, this woman is absolutely enraged, fuming. So immediately she compiles all her life savings, everything that she has, and she's like, okay, I want to go and I want to buy a tank. This is what this was. Like, I'm gonna go buy a tank. So she pulls all her money together, and it's slightly underneath how much it is required. So she starts doing like embroidery and other shit. She does like odd jobs here and there until to get over the what's it called, the 50,000 ruble mark or whatever it was, to get a to be able to buy a tank. So basically, she saves up. I think for over like 2 months, she saves up her money, and then she sends a letter to the Kremlin. Right? She sends it not only to the Kremlin, she sends it addressed to Stalin. And she specifically says, she's like, I can quote the letter, actually. Says, "Dear Joseph Vissarionovich," which was his middle name and patronymic, she writes, "In the battles for the motherland, my husband, Regimental Commissar Ilya Fedovich Oktyabrski, died. For his death, for the death of Soviet people tortured by fascist barbarians, I want to take revenge on the fascist dogs, for which I contributed all my personal savings to the state bank to build a tank. 50,000 rubles. I ask you to name the tank Combat Girlfriend," or Fighting Girlfriend, as it's translated in English, "and send me to the front as the driver of this tank. I have the speciality of a driver. I have an excellent command of a machine gun. I am a Voroshilov shooter," which is like a badge basically you can get. And then she writes her name, like Maria Oktyabrskaya. Immediately afterwards, Stalin, he reads this letter and he answers her and he sends her. He says, "Thank you, Maria Vasilyevna, for your concern for the armored forces of the Red Army. Your wish will be granted. Please accept my regards, Supreme Commander Joseph Stalin." And he sends her, he orders the construction of a tank for her, and it specifically has on the turret, "Fighting Girlfriend" painted on it, right? And at first, the people in her platoon or unit, basically, they were like, "Oh, who's this lady? Like, this is like a PR stunt, right?" And then afterwards, they realize this woman gets in the tank and she starts demolishing these Nazis. She absolutely she wipes the floors with them. Do you want to know how amazing this woman is? In an encirclement, her tank, what's it called? The treads get hit and they dislodge. In the middle of encirclement, as she's being fired upon, she gets out of the tank and starts repairing the tank. The tank treads, and then she fixes it and gets in and then goes back into the fight. Yeah. And do you know what's most amazing about her is that there's not one story of her doing this. She's done this like a dozen times, where in the middle of like severe fighting, she gets out and she jumps in. She gets out, she fixes everything, and then she jumps back into the into the tank. To the point that, by the way, there's one really nice quote. She would write letters to her family and to her sister. And one letter that she wrote to her sister, this was, I think, after the first battle, I think she went in. She wrote in the letter, she's like, "I've had my baptism of fire. I beat the bastards," meaning like this was one of the victories that they had. She's like, "Sometimes I'm so angry I can't even breathe." I'm like, this is the attitude we're supposed to have towards fascists. By the way, this is the appropriate socialist and proletarian attitude. These are not people you're supposed to be civil towards. These are not people you're supposed to be so angry at them that you can't fucking breathe. That's it. Anyways, by the way, the thing I mentioned about the rejected princesses thing, which is very cute. They do like little drawings. It's a drawing of her, and she has like an anthropomorphic tank, like it has eyes and a face like Cars. I would definitely watch this fucking movie. But yeah. Anyways, sadly, she did not survived to see the end of the war. She died in 1944, roughly a year and like 2 months, I think, before complete victory. She was one of the times also her tank was hit. She jumped out and then she started doing repairs, in which some explosive went off and the shrapnel went and hit her in the head. It didn't kill her, but it made her very basically put her in a very critical condition. She was sent to a hospital, I think at the time in Smolensk. And she was getting medical care, and she was in a coma for a couple months. She gets out of the coma, and the people of her platoon, they all send their regards and everything, and they would call her mother, which I think is very cute because she was older than most of them actually.
Yeah, she was 35.
I think she was like 38. Yeah, she was in her 30s. Yeah. Which at how much of a Chad. Like, I know there are like 20-year-old men or like adult men that couldn't do with this woman. Like the amount of conviction, right? It's absolutely amazing how driven she was.
The amount of personality, dude. It's absolutely wild, man.
But she eventually she died. She passed away in March of 1944. And she got also, I think she was the first woman to get the Hero of the Soviet Union award, which was the highest award. Military award that the Soviet Union had. Don't quote me at that. I'm not sure if she was the first one, but she was one of the first, basically. No, she was. Yeah, she was the first one to be awarded. Not only this, by the way, there's a nice little thing, like a bow to the story. Her tank, Fighting Girlfriend, was actually the crew that worked on it. They continued using the tank and they fought with it, and it was part of the storming of Berlin, and it was one of the tanks that was present during complete victory.
Her spirit kept fucking driving it right over Nazi scum bodies.
Yeah, exactly.
God
Right.
rest her soul, fucking machine.
Absolutely, like the amount of like the amount of drive and just the conviction of this woman is incredibly impressive, and it's the sort of thing that I don't think we understand exactly how horrible the war was, especially for the Soviet people, and she kind of encapsulates that a lot. I think it's absolutely amazing.
And people like, as we absolutely should remember the Holocaust, which Jews experienced, which we absolutely should, because they were the most targeted and their extermination was the most systematic and most disgusting. But people tend to forget just how big and still present the trauma is of the Soviet experience in World War II. There is not a single family that has not lost 1, 2, 3 members in that war, and that scarring will never go away. And it does sometimes, fortunately, sometimes unfortunately, influence even political thought to this day. Just like to an extent it does in other places around the world which have experienced similar suffering at the hand of the fascists. But it's sometimes very sad to see. I mean, it's a bit of a side point, but it is sometimes sad to see the using the suffering of Soviet communists, very important to state, in the Red Army and the civilian population of the Soviet Union, which has suffered at that time for modern political goals. Yes, sometimes it makes sense, but most of the time it is very transparent on just how political it is, but political in the sense of the state trying to use the glory of its past glory, which is not it's of the people that fought, in order to inspire something today. And it happens all over the world, but it's kind of the humor of suffering tends to manifest itself in reactionary mentality. I mean, it's so disgusting when you hear people in Israel, for example, using the example of the suffering that sometimes even they themselves experienced, or of their grandparents, as an argument that they now should be as strong as a brick that goes through the window of any potential oppressor currently seen in the eyes of the Palestinian. I think every single person that died in that war, be it Russian, Ukrainian, Jew, Serb, whatever the fuck, Frenchman, would be disgusted by seeing their name used for such mentality and such modern reactionary barbarism. But I'm going too much in a fucking tangent. Brilliant story of this fucking absolute, I keep using the word, but that's a unit, man. Your husband dies, you get fucking pissed off, you get money, you text the motherfucking triple double G, yo, motherfucker, the big boss, and he's like,
Big
give me
Daddy,
a tank, I'll buy the tank, okay? I'll buy the tank, give me a motherfucking tank. I want to go fuck these motherfuckers up. And then you actually stay up to your word and you actually go. And then you die doing something that you felt was your calling. Incredible.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's one more amazing lady that we can talk of the era. Maybe you can introduce her.
I would love to. I am a massive fan of a lady called Lyudmila Pavlichenko. Maybe people have heard a bit more about her because she was publicized here and there in the West to an extent. But I would just she had a similar life experience to that of the previous Red Army soldier that we talked about. She practiced using a firearm as a sport before the war, and once she got into the war, her inspired hatred towards the fascist encirclement of both her part of the Soviet Union and the Soviet Union in general inspired her to become the most lethal sniper in the history of humanity. When she survived, thankfully, the war, but during the war, after achieving incredible success, she was sent over to the United States, which even at that time was extremely sexist, while the Soviet Union, with all its problems, yes, was trying to push forward a kind of ideological merger with with the women's liberation movement. She was sent there to kind of inspire the American man who is so proud of his masculinity, yet there is a woman there telling him that he needs to join this righteous war against fascism, etc., etc. And when she went to the States to give speeches and so on in the very later parts of the war in 1943, she met the first lady of the United States at the time, who asked her, "Oh, you're the sniper girl. How many men have you killed?" Very directly. To which, and this is a cult classic, probably most of our listeners have heard it, but I'll still say it. She said, "Men, none. Fascists, 309. That, to me, is a definition of a fucking mad
Chills.
lad.
Absolute Chad, yeah.
Chills. But we need to understand, while she had incredible bravery, but her hatred of the fascist made her exceptionally brutal. I mean, she would intentionally blow Germans' legs off and leave them in the field for the enemy to come and try and pick up their wounded. And now you would think, okay, she'll kill the both of them. No, then she would blow off the legs of those two motherfuckers and their limbs and their arms. And at one point, people say, like fellow soldiers or the people with the binoculars that would help her find, targets, that a whole field of screaming Germans run red in color and hellish in sound. So I guess, I don't know, don't fuck with a woman is a lesson I always will remember, but don't fuck with a communist woman, that's for sure.
Oh man, hell hath no fury. That's what. What was I gonna say? There's a couple of points about her that I want, just like from interesting episodes from her life. Number one, she became so famous, not only internationally, but she became so famous to the Germans that they knew her by name. Even to the point, funnily enough, that apparently, by the way, her actual nickname was the Russian bitch from hell. That's the German nickname for her, right? Which is very classic.
Lady Death in the Soviet Union, but classic.
But there are episodes where they would get loudspeakers, like they would have a loudspeaker, and a Nazi officer would be like, "Ludmilla, abandon the Soviet cause and abandon your communist, your comrades and all that, and come join us. We'll give you chocolate." That's what they would say. By the way, not only this, they would talk to her in the wrong language. They would talk to her with some badly translated Ukrainian, thinking she was Ukrainian. She was actually ethnically Russian, if I remember correctly. And by the way, she would shoot the guy that would offer her chocolate.
They come pick chocolate up from his fucking dead corpse, that pussy ass bitch.
Exactly. Not only that, there's one point where basically she was really high up on a tree. And she was doing her job in sniping, and she became a target, right? And the guy, basically the other sniper, he shot at her. He missed, but she was like I have to do something. So she feigned getting hit. She pretended to be hit, and she fell like 3 or 4 meters from like the height of this tree onto the floor, and basically just stood still there in the middle of heavy snow until it snowed completely on top of her. She stayed there for 10 hours or something. Complete as snow was falling on her, and then afterwards, when the entire battle died down, nobody was going to go and check on her to see if she's actually dead, because they shot her and she fell out of the tree, so they assumed that she died. And then she waited basically these 10 hours in the middle of the snow, and then she crawled away. That's like the amount, and she was very regularly like behind behind enemy lines. She was absolutely incredibly heroic. The amount of conviction again in these people, and this is, I think, just like a microcosm of all the people who served in the Red Army. Of course, when you see your entire like villages and cities and stuff burned, you'd of course react in this way as well. Absolutely amazing person. There's so many other interesting stories about her. There's a movie actually made about her. I think it's called Sevastopol. It was recently made. It's a joint Russian-Ukrainian production. Also goes into this aspect of when she goes into the US and all that kind of stuff. Very, very interesting movie. Highly recommended.
Absolutely incredible life. We have notes here, and I want to know, Hakeem for some reason wrote Seaman Hitler as one of the points. So let's end on a funny note. What the fuck is a Seaman Hitler?
Okay, this is turned into like the World War II, veteran appreciation episode. But all right, sure. So there were a couple of people who served in the Red Army at the time that had the names of the of the top leadership of the Nazi regime. So there was a bunch of Müllers and Goerings and Himmlers, and of course there was a few Hitlers. There was one guy named
Oh my
very
God.
very unfortunately, his name was Semyon Gitler, because in Russian the that letter is not an H, it's a G.
Good.
Yeah, but when you write his name out in English, people would write Seaman Hitler. That's what they would write. So that's how it became
Poor
known.
guy. Oh my God, it's
Yeah.
awful.
He was a what's it called, a Soviet a Red Army soldier, and he was of Jewish origin, by the way, which makes it even more
Oh, that's
interesting.
hilarious.
But what makes him especially interesting is that this guy was incredibly brave. He was incredibly several times he was in situations where his entire platoon was surrounded and wounded, and this absolute mad lad, he would take a machine gun, like one of those mounted machine guns. He would carry it into some like advantageous position while he's surrounded by soldiers, and he would keep firing so his platoon would get away, would be able to escape, right? And he would keep firing until he completely ran out of ammunition, and then afterwards he tried to crawl away. And he got a medal for bravery because in one of these episodes he managed to kill 100 German soldiers.
Jesus.
As his platoon was escaping. Absolute hero. And then as for this as well, he got, I think, he got another medal as well. But because of his name at the time, it reached actually a really high level because they're like, what are the optics of giving a guy named Hitler one of our top what's it called?
Well, I would spin it in so many ways. We got our own Hitler, and he's better, and he's Jewish, motherfuckers. Like,
Yeah,
I could do
exactly
so many
right.
things with this. Follow the real Hitler, and then posters with Seaman Hitler. I could do so many fucking things.
But you know what's very interesting is eventually he was granted the award, and the award document, of course, there's like documentation with all of them, and to quote, wounded comrade Hitler with his machine gun remained alone among the enemy, but he did not lose his head, but fired until he spent all his ammunition, and then at a distance of 10 kilometers crawling among the enemy with a machine gun returned to his unit. That's the official, like, I love the videos like Comrade Hitler. But yeah, this was he repeated these feats several times. He also participated in the defense of Odessa, and he died in 1942 in the battle for Sevastopol, which was an incredibly heroic feat of World War II history that is never spoken of. By the way, side note, the Soviet aspect, the Eastern Front, is never spoken about, especially in the West. You never hear about it, despite the fact that 9 out of 10 German soldiers were killed on the Eastern Front. All major offensives and all major blows to the Nazi war machine were committed on the Eastern Front. Without the Soviets, there is no victory, right? You could argue that without the Americans and British, there would have been a Soviet victory. It would have just taken a bit longer. Without the Soviets, there would have been no victory at all. So it's just of course, ideological bullshit. That's why this happens. But anyways, side note, he passed away in this, but he had relatives, of course, and they also had the name Hitler. Or Hitler, and then afterwards they changed it. They changed it to Hitlev or Gitlev, and I believe some of his descendants are like still alive. But yeah, that's the story of the heroic comrade Seaman Hitler. May his memory be glorified.
Absolutely, and may we have a lot more Hitlers like him in the future, and not
Inshallah.
that pussy ass bitch that blew his brains out in a bunker next to his cousin that he fucked. So yeah.
Yeah, honestly. Oh man. All right, I think very quick fire round. Mao had a workout routine that the CIA studied. I'm not going to go through the workout routine, but it's very interesting. You should read it. He wrote it when he was 24 years old, and it has he breaks it up into 5 chapters. Each chapter has 27 points or something. Very interesting. Very Eastern, if I can put it that way. It's a very Chinese approach of the era to how he writes it. And by the way, do you want to know the best part? Mm-hmm. Of his what's it called? He finishes his workouts, which are very interesting. The last 2 things, yeah. The last thing that he does is he dances, and then afterwards he does breathing exercises, and that's how he finishes his workouts. He has his entire workout plan, and after each one, he has a bit of a dance. Yeah, honestly.
Because dancing is, but you need good music, and back then, did they have gramophones or players? Where he would need somebody to actually play, or people dance to silence, whatever.
Yeah.
But
or
perfect
maybe he just sang
exercise.
to himself. But yeah,
Yeah,
and
sing
he
to
published.
yourself. Oh
Yeah,
my God!
yeah,
I guess. Yeah.
he published his workout routine. I think like 4 or 5 months before the October Revolution. Just so you know, like how interesting that is. That's number one. Number two, the CIA officially studied it. There's an annotated CIA version of his workout routine. Yeah, and then finally the other thing that we were gonna go into, but this episode's gone on long enough, which was the assassination attempts on Castro, which are so interesting that I think we could actually do a proper episode on them.
That's a proper
on their
episode.
own. And now to finish off with, I think a very untold side of Soviet history. For people listening, I think this is going to really shake your faith in Soviet Union. To quote,
yeah, Jesus Christ, go.
This is from the book Reefer Madness: A History of Marijuana. They say that the weed grown in the USSR under Stalin was some of the most potent ever known to man. Under the guidance of Trofim Lysenko, Stalin assembled a crack team of growers whose marijuana was known for its intense body high and clarifying mental effects. In his personal diaries, Nikolai Bukharin writes, Joseph Stalin came to me one night as I was struggling to finish the final edit of an issue of Pravda. He handed me an ounce of marijuana that reeked of skunk. The smell alone was enough to make me tremble. Stalin says, this is a gift from Lysenko and I, and left almost immediately. I smoked that weed and I was never the same. So, Stalin passes the booth. What do you do? Stalin passes the booth.
What do you do?
Yeah, I think we can leave you.
You know
with
what
that
I say when
note.
Stalin passes the booth?
Yeah.
Let's
What do you say?
smoke and listen to some Deprogram, bruv.
Yeah, boy, let's get dialectical. All right, then. And with that said, this has been a hopefully fun episode for you guys. We're going to get back to more serious programming, but we're trying to keep it, interesting. Blend things up. Blend things up. That's not fuck. Shake things up. That's what Americans say. Fuck me.
We're a podcast. It can never be too serious.
Anyways, with all that said, this has been the Deprogram. Oh, fuck. I'm supposed to talk, right?
When you say the program, you say it's you. Yeah, go ahead.
You just let them know it's a shit show. They know already. Yes, I'm Hakeem, and you are.
My name Timmy. Okay, sorry, that was horrible. I am Yugopnik. I don't know why that was the first thing that I heard of. That I thought of. Maybe my alternative ego is Timmy from South Park.
My boomer ass would have said the my name is Jeff thing, but that's too stale of a meme.
It is so bad. But to sign off, be more of a seaman Hitler than an adult. Bye bye.